Its new video sharing app. It is kind of like Instagram for videos. The company says you can actually shoot 15-second videos on your cell phone, iPhones, and Android.
It seems the entire tech world was turned upside down when Google showed off.
Good morning. I think we can all agree that the pace of business is somewhat insane these days. I mean, we look at it and call it chaos, and it's really here to stay. We heard about it yesterday as getting uncomfortable or getting rather comfortable with change, and today we heard a lot about velocity. It is kind of the new normal. The pace at which we are all operating is how it's going to be from now on. So today I want to talk about how we at ARIA have kind of learned to embrace this chaos and not just say, well, I hope things go back to the way they were, but rather move much more quickly to produce results in this kind of new normal. So a little bit of background, because I'm going to make some bold claims with you, and you heard this in my bio, but at 11 years old, I became the downtown paper boy in Ada, Oklahoma, a town of about 17,000 people. Made about $40 a week, and I realized I could take that $40 and go to the local Army surplus store and buy whatever camouflage I wanted. And so it was kind of my first taste of capitalism. By 14, I was reminded a little too often that being paperboy wasn't cool with the ladies. And so I became a box clerk. My job was to take that cardboard box, tape the bottom, put the peanuts in, put the products in, put the peanuts in, tape the box again, and carry it to the UPS truck. So I never imagined, though, that company, 9 years later, would be Inc. 500 3 times, 101 employees, and our CEO was President Clinton's Entrepreneur of the Year. And a bunch of us kids who were there back in 1996-ish were still there running the show with a bunch of other people along the way. During that time, as you heard in my bio, I was given the trade show and event budget. And over $1 million, we were all over the place. We were in San Francisco's Moscone Center. We were in New York, Berlin, Stockholm. And so we were having a blast. But we were marketing ourselves through travel and events. During this time, we opened an office in London's Covent Garden. We opened in Austin, Texas, and then ultimately we opened an office in Dallas, and in 1998, Dallas became home to me. And so I left that company in 2000, but the reason I raise all this today is by the time I was about 23 years old, I had 1.3 million miles on American Airlines. And I bring that up because I never connected the dots until about a decade later that I was kind of the perfect target traveler. I was a leisure traveler, I was a corporate and meetings traveler, and I was a group traveler. And so I started ARIA in June of 2000 with a lot of that aggressive thinking that we had when us kids were back operating that other company. We were entrepreneurial, we were aggressive, we were working against the big dogs. I was bootstrapping the company. But it was over the next few years that I said, let's combine the love of travel and tourism and put these things together and take it to market. And so that's a little bit about my background and how it relates to travel and tourism, but that's who we serve as an audience today. What I want to give you is 8 takeaways in the next 15 minutes. These are things that are strategic yet tangible, things that you could go home and implement in your organization within a matter of hours or days. So let's kind of dive into those things. But I want to take a journey back in time for a second. Let's think about Madison Avenue, New York City, 1960s. Men in suits, lots of men in suits. The secret of marketing back in the 60s, not to downplay it, but was a lot simpler than today. There were 3 channels that you needed to reach your consumer. It was broadcast television, radio, or a very small variety of print journalism. And the way you do it as a big brand was, you put a lot of money into those 3 channels, and you saturate the marketplace, and that, in association with the fact that we didn't have all the other distractions in life, created brand awareness, and then created brand loyalty through kind of frequency. That was how things got done back in the old days. I think we can all agree, though, that things have changed just slightly in recent times. We use the term that consumers are in control, and they really are. I mean, consumers are doing all their own research. We see that we saw it in our last session, but we also see it all throughout travel and tourism. But consumers can filter what they don't want to hear, and they have a very powerful voice. I looked up TripAdvisor worst review, and this is what I found. It actually is from a hotel in England. So social media becomes a megaphone for the consumer. I mean, in this example, this single review had the reach of almost like a national brand advertisement. So this is their megaphone, and clearly they will speak when they have something to say, and we will listen. I read a stat recently that said travelers trust reviews from complete strangers more than brand advertising, which is completely true. Think about it. I went to dinner last night based on Yelp reviews, and I saw 4.5, and 5 stars, and I went to that restaurant. I have no idea who those people were, but I trust them for some strange reason, and I certainly trust them more than the big magazine ad. So this is an interesting little snapshot from Google Analytics. It might be hard for you guys to see, but we were working with a Latin American hotel chain in Costa Rica. And they had us evaluate their social media. And we were seeing, they were doing beautiful things on Facebook and Twitter, on Instagram too. I mean, they have great property, so it's easy to do good things. But we looked at TripAdvisor, and we said, what are you doing on TripAdvisor? And they said, well, we're not really getting a lot from TripAdvisor. Line number 1, if you can't read it in the back, says TripAdvisor, 91.89%. Line 2 says Facebook, 4.41%, and it goes down from there. So Latin American hotel chain, 9 hotels, their social traffic, 91% of it's coming from TripAdvisor. So that, 1, tells you 2 things. 1, they need to watch their analytics. But 2, why TripAdvisor? It's because of those reviews. Travelers are trusting the reviews, and that's where they're getting them from. Once we looked into TripAdvisor, we found something critical. One of their properties, which is on the Pacific Ocean, showed that it was about 5 miles away in the middle of a jungle. So think about that. Just because the map pin was dropped in the wrong place, I wonder what kind of effect that had to these 5,600 viewers in 1 week of that property. So the social review side of this thing is obviously enormous. Fast Company, if you haven't read this article, it was actually published more than a year ago, but it's called The Secrets of Generation Flux. And what's really interesting is it's all about this kind of chaos that's happening. And this article kind of led the discussion that influenced a lot of this discussion about change and velocity and those things. Think about this. 5 years ago, 64% of the smartphone market was led by Motorola, BlackBerry, and Nokia. Today, 2 other companies are at the top of that, and the others are distant thirds and fourth and fifth. They are Samsung and Apple. Just 5 years difference. In this article, Secrets of Generation Flux, it talks about how brilliantly managed chaos can spark success inside of companies like Nike, Foursquare, and more. So these are folks who are actually embracing the chaos inside of their organization. How industries are being revolutionized, and not only will businesses rise, but fall and fail much faster. And that any business that ignores all of this does so at their own peril, because they're either going to be left behind their competitors or irrelevant. And you saw this a lot in Randy's keynote yesterday, a lot of the same topics. So sometimes it's hard to kind of see this change in real time because we're living life through it. So I think moments of historic significance are a really easy way to see change. Anybody know what this picture is? You might have seen it before. This, in 2005, is the coronation of Pope Benedict XVI in the Vatican. So, not that long ago, 2005 for me is, I'm 5 years into my company I have now. This is 4 years after 9/11. Doesn't seem like that long ago. But again, when you have the chance to compare matters of significance, in 2013, this is the coronation of Pope Francis. Those aren't cigarette lighters. Those are smartphones. So think about that. I mean, the picture on the bottom makes a lot of sense, but the picture on the top, I'm surprised. It doesn't seem like that long ago that I see maybe 1 or 2 smartphones. Just a very short 8-year difference, and so much revolutionary change has happened. All right, we're getting to our takeaways, and this is number 1. Anybody want to guess? Enough with the peer pressure. This is takeaway number 1 is about the fact that as we hear a lot in our side of things as a marketing agency, we hear clients say, well, I do that because we've always done it, or I placed that magazine ad, or I renewed this service because I got the renewal invoice, but I'm going to really look at it next year. I don't want to do it again. You can't just keep doing stuff because you've done it. You can't keep doing stuff if it's not paired with meaningful metrics. the pace of this stuff. And again, like Randy said yesterday, if you're not staying relevant every day, you will be left behind. So, on number 2, really what we talk about, and as we move to the rest of this, we talk about plan the work and work the plan. We just heard about research. This old adage is still very true. We hear things from our clients like, we need to be on Pinterest, or Instagram just launched video, so we're going to jump on that, or we need a new website because ours is 3 years old. None of those things may be incorrect, but they're not necessarily examples of strategic thinking. They're kind of tactical, knee-jerk response. New service, let's do it. Pinterest is cool, let's do it. The old adage remains true. You got to plan the work and work the plan. For us, takeaway number 2 is about planning, but it's about planning freedom. Plan quickly in a rapid manner with the ability to quickly adjust. Now notice, I deliberately used the words quickly twice in this. Planning is very important, and research as part of planning is very important. But in our opinion, in most cases, the 50-page marketing plan is gone. There's not time for it. We at ARIA set out to have 5 objectives that we wanted to meet this year. These were things that we set out as business objectives, and we paired them with 11 strategies. 11 strategies to activate those objectives. And then we have 19 tactical marketing activities under those things. One was the book you heard that I had written. So, pretty thorough plan. The whole plan is represented in 2 pages. So, I'm going to give you this in the end of the presentation, by the way, because it's a great planning tool that we use, but you got to move quickly in the planning. Planning's more important than ever, but you do have the ability with digital to make changes along the way because things aren't so permanent. So I kind of want to jump back as we approach number 3 for a second to this video. How are we expected to really cut through this noise when, one, the consumer has all the control and everybody else is out there blasting the marketplace with messaging? The way we see it is one simple word, and that's you in the very middle. There you go. It's about entertainment, especially in travel and tourism. If you can entertain your audience through storytelling, you'll accomplish the rest of your goals. They'll be educated, and they won't necessarily realize they're being advertised to. And our formula is very simple and non-academic. We look at it as brand, story, promotion, putting those 3 things together. Brand is basically understanding who you are today and what you have to offer to your audience. It's okay to be aspirational, but you've got to be authentic because otherwise the consumer will see right through it. Stories is just going back to classic storytelling. Content is still absolutely king in all of this because you can do all this great stuff with all these platforms, but if the content is not engaging and more entertaining, the consumer will just turn it off and filter it out. And so if you do those first 2 things well, the promotion is getting it into the channels where they are congregating. So, again, it's value proposition. Why do you exist to your audience? If you can't answer that very well, then you really need to think about it. Craft unique, entertaining stories that position you uniquely, and then look and see where they're congregating. This is where the research side of it comes in, and things like Google Analytics and Facebook Insights and all those tools that we have available to us virtually for free, if not completely for free, can quickly tell you where your audience is and what they're doing and what they're interested in. And so, if you do that, what we find happen a lot is, if you're being relevant to your audience, then they're taking this off into their own social sphere. And I won't talk a lot about social media because you guys all, I think, are probably doing this well, but just keep in mind what it means when someone retweets or shares or fans or likes or does one of those activities. Ryan's taking it over into his circle, which you know did not have access to beforehand. And now Ryan's almost endorsed you, and now you're over here. And so, as takeaway number 4, if you can get them talking, they'll elevate your voice. And that's just social media 101, but I don't want to overlook it. This whole presentation is about managing chaos. This is very low-hanging fruit. Entertaining, engaging stories, your audience will do a lot, not all, but a lot of the rest of your marketing work for you. Okay, we can't have a presentation about marketing without mobile, right? But I'm not going to take this where you guys think, because you all ought to also be thinking and doing mobile. But I have a little equation on screen for you. I actually had to think about this for a second when I wrote it. Mobile is not less than desktop, is what that illustrates. And what I'm saying is, mobile is not the second project after you redesign your website. It is not we just did this, so let's trim out the menu and make it narrower and throw it up as the mobile.mydestination.com. Mobile is a completely different paradigm. And we heard this earlier. What was it John called it? Life devices, I think? These things are so different. Never would I walk down the streets of Jacksonville with my laptop computer doing this. I mean, mobile is a completely different paradigm. So think about it like this. If you're a big budget brand and you've got TV and radio advertising, you wouldn't just copy and paste your TV ad onto the radio. It just doesn't even make sense. You're missing a whole sensory component called visual. It's kind of like the same thing. Mobile is a parallel channel, but it is absolutely not subordinate. So we look at it and say, you can't ignore it, you can't de-emphasize it. Google says by 2015, mobile internet usage will overtake desktop internet usage. So I've been quoting that for a while, and it was when I was thinking about this presentation this morning that I realized that's like 13 months away from now, is 2015. So, and we're all doing it in this room right now. Mobile is so big, and it's got to be given at least equal weight to your other marketing activities. So here's what we say. We don't really build websites anymore at ARIA. I mean, yes, it's HTML, and yes, we put it on a domain, but what we look at is centralized databases that present content out in a variety of different ways. So it could be an app, it could be a mobile website, it could be a tablet-optimized responsive design, and it certainly is going to be your main website. That's the way you need to be thinking about your website. It's not just this project we do every 3 years or so, but really a digital ecosystem, if you will, that evolves over time. And yes, it needs to respond down to different devices. I have the question a lot about, should I build an app or should I build a mobile website? We often say the question is probably not an or question. You should absolutely have a mobile website optimized version, and you may or may not need an app if you want to do something a little more advanced. But you have to think about it in terms of what is the role that all of this plays in my digital environment. Because it is about content, and it's content first delivered in the right way to these different devices, giving them equal weight. So all of us in industry have icons, and for us in advertising and marketing, one of our icons is David Ogilvy, founder of Ogilvy Worldwide, an ad man from the 1960s, one of those guys you saw in suits, but he was a little different because he coined the phrase in the 1960s that it's not creative unless it sells. And it's something that I've lived by in my advertising career for over 13 years. Let's say it another way. If it doesn't produce a result, it's a failure. My more modern interpretation on this is to demand results. I mean, if this is all under that flag of chaos and moving quickly in this new disruptive environment, you got to demand results from yourself, from your stakeholders, from your marketing partner vendors, from your employees, and be careful to make sure that they are meaningful, objective-based results. I guarantee for any of you, if I were your agency, I could go into your Google Analytics and find some positive green graph and present it to you as a positive result. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So we say, pair this stuff up front. Back when I define my objectives, how am I going to measure it? All the way back there. And if you have an agency, make the agency do it. What are we measuring? How are we going to measure it? What's the absolute specific metric we're going to use? And then I need to see those on some frequency down the line as you're operating my campaign. So we look at it like this. Takeaway 6 is about interactions over impressions. Advertising in the post-advertising world, as we call it, does not mean that advertising is dead, not by any means, nor is impression-based advertising, where you're looking to get eyeballs on your property. Not dead either, but it's also not enough. We look at these things and say that a result is going to fit into one of three categories for any destination: awareness, engagement, or conversion. Awareness is simply how many eyeballs did I get on something, my website, my ad, or something along those lines. Engagement, though, is very different. It's when I got them there, regardless of how many. When I got them there, what did they do? So examples of engagement metrics are increased time on site, more pages per browse, things that show they're more deeply engaging with you. And then conversion metrics, our best conversion metric in the industry, of course, is a hotel room for most of us, but there's also signals of intent to travel. If I give you my email address to download a visitor's guide, that's a pretty good sign that I might be traveling. So there's industry standards like that. But really strive for more and more of those engagement and conversion metrics. You may not be in the millions of numbers on your metrics, but they're more meaningful metrics when you look at kind of bottom of the funnel, because you ultimately want to get them to convert to a subscriber or to a booked hotel room or something along those lines. So focus on interactions over, or not just because of impressions. So we've all seen this, that iconic entry point by highway to Las Vegas. And whether you love or hate Las Vegas, I think Las Vegas does one thing really well, which is experience. Takeaway 7 for me is I've been preaching experience matters for about 4 years on stage. And today I've modified it with one word, which is, it used to all be about the experience. Today it's still all about the experience. And all of this stuff I'm talking about, keep in mind that the basics remain true, which is every single little tiny touch point matters with your audience. We've got 2 clients in Texas who are 2 very different brands. One's this kind of weird, artsy, they're almost like a little Austin, Texas, if you know that kind of analogy, and they like it. They're kind of this music community. The other's a beach town on the Texas Gulf Coast. Both of them have a brand ambassador training program they put their employees through, and I bet a lot of you guys do too, where you're training your frontline service employees, your taxi drivers and your hoteliers on how to provide good service. But what these guys have done is they've really crafted that under their brand. And so they're delivering the service in a very different way if you compare the two. It's still good service, but it's part of that whole experience. I had the occasion to stay recently at the Rockport Hampton Inn outside of Corpus Christi, Texas. You might have never heard of Rockport. It's about a 10,000 person community. It's about 45 miles from a major airport. And I read on the way in that this hotel was ranked in the top 10 hotels in the Hilton family of hotels. So let me explain that differently. A Hampton Inn competing with the flagship Hiltons is in the top 10. How do you do that with a limited service hotel? So I'm very curious about this. So I pull up and I drive through the little roundabout, and it looks like a Hampton Inn. And it's a great hotel. Here's the pool on the side. Here's the roundabout in front, the kind of tower up top. It looks like a Hampton Inn. I open the lobby, I go in the door, and here's the little area where we have our breakfast buffet and the desk on the left. It looks like a Hampton Inn, but it all changed the moment the first person spoke to me. I don't know whether this lady named Lucy was guest services, bellhop, reception, concierge, VP of operations, Mr. Conrad Hilton. I don't know what she was, but she was awesome. And when I got in my hotel room, I do expect that the Ritz-Carlton might put a chocolate on my pillow, but I didn't expect a chocolate on my pillow from the Hampton Inn, nor did I expect it to be local Texas chocolate. It's so easy. It probably costs 30 cents to do this. So that experience happened 6 years ago, and I use it all the time, and I've got this great memory of Rockport, Texas, because of the Hampton Inn. And so we can do all this big brand, expensive advertising, but if the experience isn't right, the rest of it really doesn't matter. So as we approach takeaway 8, terrifying picture in my mind. So it's what I would call kind of agility in chaos. That's the first thought I had when I saw this picture. Takeaway 8 is tying it all back together, which is you've got to get agile. This brings back discussions from earlier today, from Randy's discussion yesterday, which is essentially you got to move, and you got to move quickly. Re-engineer yourself and your organization to be agile and thrive in chaos. What I think this means is you've got to spot your wins more quickly, and you've got to advance those things. You've got to admit your losses and own them and move past them. It's going to happen. So if you are in, let's say, a digital advertising or digital marketing program that's not quite producing the results, go to your vendor or go to yourself and say, you know what, this might not be quite right. Let's quickly try something new. Let's change it. Research in real time. Apply research not only on the front end, but actually throughout the process to make sure you're actually getting those results. And agility is going to be the key to all this. If you're not in an environment where you can make decisions and move quickly, you might be one of those examples that Randy gave yesterday where you're just kind of left behind. Or, again, BlackBerry, I think, is up for bid right now if anyone wants to buy it. We probably all had one a while back. On the intro, thanks for that introduction, by the way. We did just write a book at ARIA called Disruption, Destination Marketing in the Post-Advertising Age. It's actually available for one more day for free on Kindle. So if you go to disruptionbook.com, and if you liked what you heard today, this is a lot of the thinking that we apply at ARIA. So I wanted to leave a little time for Q&A. I think we've got, actually, no idea what time it is, but I think we do have some time.